Hello and welcome to the Hollow Herald podcast. This is episode number 14, I believe it is. We're live streaming at our normal time, about 8 o'clock. We started a little bit late this time, but that's all right. Just like to welcome everybody to the stream that's here, and just like to mention that if you guys are listening to the pre-recorded version, we invite you to join us on the live stream. It's a really great way for us to have feedback and a really great way for us to talk back and forth, and it's just a grand old time. But sometimes we edit out some of the things that are a little bit more boring topics. So if you want to be there for those or everything, yeah, it's just a great time. So we stream every Monday night at about 8 o'clock, and yeah, at 8 o'clock Mountain Time. So yeah, be there. It'll be awesome. Last week we missed an episode, so that's why it's not episode 15. We're on episode 14. It was Memorial Day, so we just decided to take a little break off. But we plan to release an older unreleased version of our podcast, one of our first test one we ever did, but it just wasn't quite of the quality we were ready for you guys. So sorry about missing that week, but we're right on the gauge, and I don't see us missing another week for a really long time. So yeah, I guess let's go ahead and let's jump right into it. Introduce yourselves, boys.
Hi, I'm Paul. I think everyone knows me, but I have taken quite a break from the podcast as of recent, but now I'm back for the long haul. I don't have much to do for a little while here, so I'm excited to get into what we're going to talk about today, and it should be really fun.
And it's me, Alex, once again here with the Hollow Herald podcast. Happy to kind of be a more frequent member, and we got some good stuff for you today, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, so we have a lot to talk about. So we missed a week of news. Not much happened last week in news terms. I mean, in the week that we missed, but a lot just barely happened. AWE happened, so the Augmented World Expo just happened, which is like the biggest day for augmented reality and virtual reality and a lot of different of those spheres. And it just barely happened. And there was a lot of announcements. A lot of companies were there. A lot of content creators were there. It was really awesome. Sadly, we missed out on it, but we've been following it really closely, and we have all the latest news and all the happenings for you guys. So I guess that's probably a pretty good place for us to start, wouldn't you guys say?
Oh yeah, I would definitely agree. AWE, a lot of really big news came out today. Well, literally just today. I think today was the biggest day of the expo. That's when all the keynotes were, and a lot of the big people were there, and big companies kind of announcing what kind of things they're going to be doing with augmented reality in the coming year. So we wish we could have gone. I know, I really wish that we could have gone. But thank God we have reporters and we can still get the news out of it.
Yeah, in today's world, it makes it really easy with Twitter and everything else to be able to just, almost be there, especially with all the live streams, and the flow of information is almost like you're there. That's how good it is. So yeah, so go ahead and hit us. Do you want to tell some of the announcements they had on the first day?
Some of them, I'll start with what kind of happened before the event even started. Some companies said what they were bringing to the expo. So this company called Usense announced this thing called the Fingo, which is a single camera / dual lens sensor capable of 6 degrees of freedom head tracking motion. So what that is basically it's improving the head tracking software on its technology to improve the head tracking software on an MR device. So I thought that's a pretty interesting place to start, because I think that's also a big thing is head tracking, in the fact that when you use the Microsoft HoloLens, you do see a little bit of stutter when you move your head across, if you move it rapidly. And I think technology like this, if what they're saying is correct, it will kind of mitigate that, and it'll be a much more smooth experience when using your head as the controller.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that people like Google are picking up this kind of technology, I think they mentioned that, right? Didn't they say Google's interested in using this kind of technology?
Oh yeah, definitely. They didn't say specifically with this one, but when I'm looking at the video right now, it even tracks the hand. So when this guy puts his hand up, he's wearing a HoloLens, he puts his hand up on a clock, and the clock actually pops out. So it's an augmented reality clock, but he puts his hand out and it pops at him, so the clock gets bigger. So it's kind of an interesting thing to look at, I'd say.
Yeah, because on the way the HoloLens, it's not real time tracking, right? It just kind of you scan in your spaces, and then every second couple seconds, that's when it rescans in stuff, correct?
Not necessarily. I know on the MR recorder, that's kind of the impression it gives. I think it's a little more real time than we think. But this kind of is just advanced head and hand tracking. So, how do you guys think this will change the devices of the future? I guess is a good question to start with this.
I think it's a big deal. I remember recently we did kind of a velocity test for the give me a sec, for the HoloLens, and me and Austin, we got in his car and we used 3D draw, and I held my hand out the window and drew a line out the window as we went by. And basically, the faster we got, the harder it was for the line to keep up. It did keep up. It was a delayed effect, and it kind of proved that the HoloLens could be used in a car one day. So I feel like this is one step closer to us being able to use this HoloLens in the car. I think this is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes it more usable for real time interaction spaces where you're gonna have to get insanely close, detailed scanning, or if you have moving objects, especially if you're trying to track the speed of things and stuff. I mean, that could definitely help with that. So, what other stuff was there? There's quite a bit of other stuff, right? Wasn't there?
Yeah. So Google and Lowe's were working together to create a visual positioning service. I think we were going to talk about this last week, actually, and it's kind of improving the retail experience and showing it's easier to navigate stores. So a huge store like Lowe's, you can have less staff if people are just wearing augmented headsets where they can say okay, Google, find me this item, and it will help them track it. And I just turned on my phone, but
It's crazy how sensitive that is. Yeah, they released that kind of stuff at Google I/O, didn't they?
Yeah, I think that came out at Google I/O, but I know Lowe's specifically was bringing it to AWE to show people exactly how it works. I don't know what their booth would look like, but I'm sure it was something like a mock store, like a small scale store kind of deal, where people could kind of get an idea of what.
That's awesome. Yeah, what's cool about that is the technology that they're tracking. It uses instead of the mesh mapping that we're used to, it uses really specific dot mapping, if I remember correctly, and it places millions of little dots everywhere, and they could get it down to accuracy of millimeters, from what I understand. So you walk into a store, and you're like, oh my god, where's the 3-inch nails or something like that? I need these specific wall studs or something, and then you can just plug it right in, and it puts up a little arrow and directs you right to it, to the exact millimeter where it is, which is really impressive. I think it's actually something we talked about one of our very first podcasts was a store app idea where you could you would just follow a line and you could plug in all of your items you would need, and it would automatically point out the fastest route for you to get it on there. And then with technology like the self-checkout or the automated checkout, I mean, you literally just walk in, walk out instantly. You don't even need to know where everything is exactly at the store. How crazy of a shopping experience is that? Is that a shopping experience you guys would be apt to, or are you guys kind of ones that like to wander around stores and stuff?
Well, in a place like Lowe's, I feel like you don't go and shop. If you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, you have a specific product in mind. You have something specific that you're really trying to look for. So, shopping and browsing and spending a lot of time there, probably not something I would do, It's going to be more specific. And this idea that we've been talking about takes us back to a couple weeks ago when we were talking about Google I/O, and they released that you could do that. You could hold your phone up, and it would show this little, a dotted pathway to the product you were looking for, and you were right, Eric. They said it was accurate of up to 10 millimeters, or centimeters, I'm sorry. But I thought this would make things a lot easier. However, I'd be more interested in shopping if it were Walmart or a superstore. Imagine Cabela's, an AR Cabela's, being able to go through all the hunting gear or fishing gear, just camping supplies. I mean, I feel like that would be if you're wanting to shop, it would be better for other stores rather than just a home improvement store. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because you could have a virtual catalog right there as you decide to scroll through it. You're okay, I need corn. And then it's okay, what kind of corn do you need? Do you need this? It's this price. It's this price. Okay, I need this. And it takes you right to it. So instead of okay, so you walk into Walmart or a store with a or a Harmon's or whatever your guys' local big grocery store is. You walk in there and there's like just a wall of options, just like hundreds of options. And you can't like instantly know all the options. You don't get ratings of all the options. You don't know what it is. And it's actually quite overwhelming. I think there's a statistic showing that if it's above 3 options for picking something, it actually becomes a stress to pick between it. And the reason is, especially at a store, you don't have any of the information. You know, you have a price, but it's overwhelming. There's a lot of options. You want to just get in and get out. But what would be cool is like, let's say you're looking at the corn, or before you walk in and you're planning your route or something like that, you could like see reviews of certain things. Like a Cabela's would be perfect. Like you want a fishing pole, and I mean, you walk into Cabela's and there are so many fishing poles, right, Paul? I mean, you could talk to us about a little bit about would that be helpful for you? Let's say you're going into Cabela's to find a certain kind of fishing pole, but you don't know a lot about fishing. Do you think that would be helpful, or do you think it would be better just to be able to talk to a Cabela's expert? What do you think?
I think it would be an extremely helpful thing, and I think it would even be more helpful if it was paired with an AI that could act like the Cabela's expert. So the way I first saw this is, I think businesses would be most interested in this, and then they'd have to make customers get used to it, because businesses, they want to have, like, the goal is to minimize costs, correct? So you'd want a fewer amount of employees, and a system like this, if paired with like a good AI, could really get rid of the need for having floor associates out there who have to explain products to people, where they could just say, hey Google, tell me about this product, and Google Assistant tells them literally about the product, and they're able to make an informed decision. But in this base stage, I think it would be really, really helpful to have you, like, while you're talking to the guy, you can have the stats up about the product. So like, how many times have you been to Best Buy and you're looking at like multiple computers and stuff, and you don't know exactly what one you want, and then you ask some guy and he just points to the stats, or maybe he's trying to just get the sale on it, so he might flub over a few important stats. Well, if you have those stats right up there next to the product, you can like fact check the employee and also ask more informed questions like, oh, so how does this affect the performance, and like, do I really need this for what I'm going to be working on, kind of stuff. So I think it could be both useful for the customer and the business, but I see in the future it being more useful for the business.
Exactly. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. I'm going to find a link.
I agree with you, Paul. It's funny that you should bring up Best Buy, because it's kind of a running joke for us to go to Best Buy and try to get somebody to help, because they don't always, like the Best Buy employee, not to point fingers at Best Buy, I'm sure this happens everywhere else, but that's where I've seen it the most, is the employees don't always know what they're talking about. And I remember there's one guy at Best Buy that me and Eric try to find. And if he's there, we trust him and have to like seek him out. You know, like the day we go to Best Buy, we hope that he's there so we can ask him stuff. And you know, if they have like some AI that's like right there on point, willing and ready to answer questions, like I don't have to worry about this employee not knowing, because it's an AI. It's been programmed to know its stuff, and it's been programmed to be able to answer my questions. You know, I feel like this would be a huge advantage to companies.
Yeah, what would be cool is I can't find the link right now, but there's actually, I saw in a mall, there was like an unmanned kiosk, and you put your HoloLens on, as you walked up to it, like a little virtual assistant would come up, and it was like this little alien thing, and as you walk over to a phone, it would tell you about those phones and be like, oh, hey, this phone's pretty cool. So you had like a little virtual salesman almost, which is kind of cool, because like you only can have so many employees, you know, and you know, some of your employees are better salesmen than others. So exactly like Alex said, like we have certain employees like at Best Buy that we like search for to find. What would be cool is to get like all of the best salesmen and employees, or the most knowledgeable people, and have them be part of like the programming of this. Obviously they're not going to code it, but they would definitely be, you know, hey, I've noticed that customers like it when I do this. Instead of getting the guy that just reads the stats, you get like the best overall experience for the customer and for, you know, the thing. You're not just trying to get people that are sell you stuff for commission, you know, they're actually trying to help you, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And if you find that like the salesperson, like even the AI salesperson, like I think we've all ran into the aggressive salesperson, well, just feel free to turn it off and shop at your leisure, and then when you need information, you can always ask for information, but then always feel free to turn it off so you're not feeling like you're pressured into maybe like a high dollar purchase. So like imagine going to a car dealer and saying, well, I know exactly what car I want, but you might have the sales guy who it's in his best interest, like he has an incentive to upsell you on literally every option with a car. He's not going to let you just settle for the base model. It's just not in his best interest. So this is just a way, if a car dealer came out with this, I think that car dealer would do extremely well, because people don't like being pressured into buying stuff, especially expensive stuff.
It's intimidating, especially with car dealerships. That's a perfect example. I mean, first off, most car dealerships, especially if it's a used car dealership, they're not proficient in the car that they're selling. Like I went to look at an M3, and I was never going to be able to buy an M3, but I just wanted to go see one. And the guy there didn't know anything about it. I knew a lot more about it than him, but I was curious about it. But he was just trying to sell it to me for a high price, or extremely high price. Everybody has this experience as a salesman. But what would have been nice is if I just showed up to the dealership, they hand me a HoloLens, and then I can just peruse their car selection. Then there's a virtual salesman right there that's just telling me the features. And I can like open up the car, and when I look inside the car, there's different, like, if I look at the dash, it like tells me what kind of leather the dash is made of, or whatever. The engine, you can look at the specs, then you can look at the price, and then you can automatically compare that price to like Kelley Blue Book or other dealerships right there. You can see how it's rating, and then you're not extremely intimidated by there, because that's turned me off so much from car dealerships. And I know you're looking at getting a car, right, Paul?
Oh yeah, I'm looking to get a car in a couple weeks here. And like, yeah, when I go to dealerships, I always tell them like, oh, I'm just looking right now, like I'm looking to buy in like a couple weeks. And they're always trying to be like, oh, but there's this deal right now. There's this deal like right now, you'll save $2,000 if you buy now. And then I say like, oh no, I'm good. And then I go home and I keep on looking, and like the next week, the same deal is still there. So they always pull this stuff where like, oh, it's a limited time offer. Well, you're going to have more deals. Like, you don't have deals one time a year. Like, if there's always going to be a deal. And I think just having a salesperson, like a high pressure salesperson, would make the experience much worse. Like, I've already kind of like, I get tired from going and shopping for cars right now. Like, I go like once a week to different car dealerships, and it's always just like an exhausting experience, because it's constantly telling people like, oh, I'm not ready to buy the car yet. I'm still like shopping around. And it's like they're trying to get you to leave the lot in a car that day, and without like letting you make a really informed decision.
But if you had like a little virtual assistant or a little virtual salesman that could just tell you all the facts you need to know about the car, for the dealerships would be really beneficial, because then they don't have to worry about training their employees as much. They can just download the certain app for the HoloLens, or they can just do a patch update for new cars or something like that, and then they get all the newest features, and they get all the new, and they have all the knowledge you could ever imagine. And I know. I know, at least personally, that would help me a lot. What do you think, Alex? Do you think like you would appreciate a virtual salesman, or do you like the real back and forth with the person?
You know, me being like a customer, I know it can be like, I agree with you guys, it's a very stressful experience going and buying cars. But from a dealership's point of view, like having these pushy salesmen, having them pressure you and like kind of be super sly and stuff, it works. And people will buy cars from them. So I feel like replacing the salesman with an AI, they may see this as making less money, because they're still selling cars. You know, even with salesmen, they're still selling cars, and if like having an AI just kind of nonchalantly, oh, like that's okay, you don't have to buy today. You know, I don't think they would be as apt or as eager to adopt an artificial intelligence system for selling.
But you also have to realize that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was saying you also have to realize that the salespeople, they make a salary and they make a commission. If you can completely remove them from the situation, they're still going to make they're going to make more money than they currently were. It just depends how the system is sold. And I can even imagine car companies kind of forcing dealers to do this, because they want to make sure their cars are being sold in the best light possible. And it's really hard to have a quality control thing as a car company if there's like not hundreds of thousands, like tens of thousands of dealerships across the country. It's really hard to control every single salesperson and make sure they're selling your cars correctly. Like, they spend a lot of money training salespeople. Like, they fly them to different places to test the cars and get presentations on them. You can completely remove all of that and have like a 10-person team be working on this app.
Like, have like General Motors regulate what the AI says for all General Motor dealerships.
Yeah, I can see
Something like
they would
that.
have their own team of marketers and salespeople and programmers all work together to build an AI that's great for the customer and great for the business. And I think that's the great thing about living in a fair market is I guess the consumers will decide, because this is definitely, I mean, we just threw out like a really great app idea for a company if they're looking to do that. You know what I mean? I mean, just as a dealership, even if you're a used car dealership, just to say, you know, that, I mean, if someone made some software and just sold it to car dealerships with a HoloLens, saying that, how cool would that be for marketing, saying that you're like an augmented reality car dealership where you can come and just use the HoloLens for a few minutes and browse their catalog and stuff like that. I mean, it's a really good idea. So you're welcome to any developers that are listening. And I think I could totally see a team of people just working on it, and then you get the best experience, and it would mitigate a lot of cost. What do you guys think about like the cookie cutter experience though? Like, I know we get kind of dangerous. Like, I'll use it like an analogy, like Common Core. Like, I know none of us are probably really big fans of Common Core because it's such a cookie cutter educational experience. Do you think that transcends into commercial sphere at all, or mostly remains kind of like in an educational sphere, like a Common Core, but for like sales practices, basically? What do you guys think?
That's a good question. I just think like, that is a really good question. Like, for each dealer, yeah, you do get a different experience. Like, all the small dealers, they might lose this image that like, oh, hey, we're nice people. Like, in a lot of local towns, you always have like this one dealer where, you know, like the people are going to be good to you there. And that, like, that's the image they've worked on for years and years and years. And then the car company comes in and forces them to start using an AI to sell cars. And then you get this, you just get this cookie cutter approach where it might not even feel human at the moment. And it's just kind of, it could even hurt sales. Yeah, I'd agree. Like that. Yeah, the cookie cutter approach can hurt, but it might be kind of what we're moving towards. But once AI gets better, each AI will sort of be different in the way that they learn, and
It'll cater to you specifically.
Yeah.
Like, it may be cookie cutter, but it's a cookie cutter towards you, which kind of defeats the purpose. Like, they all have these same rules and guidelines, but it'll kind of specify itself to you. Like, if you're a boy, maybe you'll have a girl dealer, or if you're a girl, maybe you'll have a boy dealer. I don't know the psychology behind it, but that's just an example of one of the ways it could cater itself. Or maybe it could be LeBron James selling your car, or someone you really trust. Like, let's say a figure that you really trust, like Philip DeFranco. A lot of people really trust Philip DeFranco. Like, I know he would never sell himself out to this, but instead of a salesman, they could use Philip DeFranco to cater that experience more to you, because you trust him, and that's someone you trust more. Or maybe it's an older. There's like a whole psychology thing you can get into it, and that could be a really interesting future live in, where it's not necessarily cookie cutter experience, but it's a customizable cookie cutter experience.
That's very interesting because, yeah, like Paul said, like the cookie cutter experience may hurt the company, but maybe that's what the people want. And eventually the company's going to realize this and simply have to sacrifice. Because if people want that and there's other companies doing it, they're going to go to there and they're going to give them service there. And companies that aren't embracing this are going to see that. It's like, oh, we're losing money anyway. We might as well adopt the cookie cutter like approach, you know what I'm saying? But it's a really good question, Eric. I'm not really sure how, like, if people would even embrace that, like having LeBron James sell them a car or something like that. That'd be kind of eerie, almost.
Well, I mean, that's what I read it a couple years ago. That's an article about from some futurist people, some like the leading future experts. Experts on the future. That was the thing that he said about the internet. It was like the 3 trends that were going to be common in in the future, the 3 internet trends that were going to be very common. And they said marketing is going to be highly personalized. Like you'll see your favorite model, or you'll see your favorite actor wearing the clothes you would like to buy if you're looking at buying a clothes. Like let's say I like a YouTuber, MCQB Bushcraft, MCQ Bushcraft, and I like the gear he uses. When I go to a site, I would see him using the saw I want to buy. I would see him using the pants I would like to buy and stuff like that. You get this highly personalized experience. And I think we can already kind of see that taking effect in the way that Google and Amazon does their marketing. And it's actually kind of interesting because we'll get back to AWE, but this kind of leads us into another topic. Go ahead and tell us about Google's new ad block policy, Paul.
Okay, so next year, Google Chrome is going to have an update, which will put an automatic ad blocker. They claim to remove obnoxious ads that take up too much of your experience and kind of only allow like banner ads to show, and maybe the occasional pop-up as long as it really caters to you. So it's kind of like an ad block light type deal where you're only seeing non-obtrusive ads. So I think that's something that's very interesting, and there was an article that was just posted. I'll post it in the chat right now and obviously in the description of the video, where someone made the case that what Google's really trying to do is just make sure they don't have any competitors by blocking all ads besides the ads that they've already approved, and most of those ads that they've approved are sold by Google. So with most Americans using the Chrome web browser, theoretically you can cut out literally every other advertising company from the game by just saying, we're just going to block your ads on our browser. I think this kind of harkens back to when Microsoft got sued for the monopoly thing with Internet Explorer. I forget the exact kind of situation, but they weren't allowing you to have other browsers on their systems. I'm sorry. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this develops, and if these companies that are going to be threatened by this new ad blocker will sue Google for the move. What do you guys think?
I think it's interesting. Google announced this a long time ago that they would be docking you points, algorithm points, search ranking points, if you had obtrusive ads. So that means an obtrusive ad is like, let's say you click on a page and you're trying to scroll down and it won't let you scroll down unless you click something, or you click on a page and your entire page gets filled up with this ad where you actually have to physically search for the X to get out of it. Those are what's considered obtrusive ads, and they ruin the internet experience as a whole, and Google realized that, and they realized that there's a big problem there and that they have to fix it. And I think this is one of their approaches. As far as if it's good or bad, I don't really know. What do you guys think?
It's one thing that I have an issue with is further down in the article, it talks about how Google will allow publishers what they're calling funding choices, where the publishers could charge the consumer a set price per page to view to use third-party sites that block all advertising. So Eric, I know you're pretty big about ad blocker and stuff like that. I guess I could be wrong, but I think this article is saying that the publisher could charge you for using a different ad blocking service other than the Chrome blocking, which kind of bothers me.
I think yeah. Go ahead, Paul. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it kind of harkens to like this idea of net neutrality. It's like Google, with owning the Chrome browser, and which is like the majority used browser in the United States, and I'm not sure what the world one is. I'm sure it's pretty near the top, if not at the top.
Chrome. They have like 80 to 90% market share on browsers.
Yeah, and so they're controlling the market. They're controlling access to the internet for people and for other companies, these advertisers who, they make money off of selling advertisements, whether those be intrusive or not. And if Google brings up this idea of, well, we're just going to block your ads because they're not sold by Google, I think that's a dangerous thing to think, that Google basically controls what we get to see in terms of advertisements, because they can say, this is what we want to like this is what we want our users to see, and we don't want them to see that product because we're competing with that company. Things like that, which I think is a very dangerous move to get into. So I'll be very interested to see if there's lawsuits regarding how this affects people's internet access.
So it's interesting to see the double take. I think what we can draw from all of this is the evolution of the internet. I think this all kind of adds to this evolution of the internet and how it works. I mean, if we look back a few years ago, there was no such thing as AdBlock. AdBlock's a recently new invention, and ads were pretty bad for a while there. And this was kind of their answer to that problem. Was someone came and they created AdBlock, and I remember the uproar from AdBlock, and they tried to get sued, and it was free. It was open source. There was you could freely block ads, and you could freely do all of this, and everybody got it. I mean, a huge amount of the internet uses AdBlock. I think it's like 36, or I think it's even higher than that now. If one of you guys could look that up for me, that would be awesome. While I'm talking, and I mean, it's an insane amount of people that use AdBlock, and the internet runs off of advertisements. So it's like our channel runs off of advertisements. Most websites run off of advertisements. If it's a news site or if it's anything like that, they run off of some format of advertising. And the fact that they're losing out on this larger market share makes it hard, and it also is a big cash cow for Google to come in and say that. So I'm surprised, honestly, that it's taken them this long to get into the game and default to building one into there. What do you think, like, a user's experience is? How do you think a day-to-day user's experience is going to change with this new Google AdBlock?
Me personally, first off, I just like to talk about like what the internet was years ago, like when we were all 6 and 7 years old. Like, there was, like, I remember, like, not very vividly, obviously, but I still remember just seeing ads, like, all over the place, on the top, on the sides, and they were just weird stuff, weird stories that could, like, take you to kind of shadier parts of the internet and could get you in trouble. And I remember my mother, at least, was super careful. She told me, like, don't click on, like, any of the ads and stuff, because, I don't know, it was just, like, super weird, and it, like, really kind of polluted the internet. But then, as things got a lot bigger, like, the internet started becoming more, like, embraced, and people started figuring out how to make it better, like, all of that kind of disappeared. I mean, on smaller websites, we still kind of see that, but on bigger ones, it's no longer an issue, at least, I feel like. So, and, I don't know, it makes the internet feel cleaner, and I feel like users are gonna embrace that a lot more, just like this ad blocking thing. So I think Google Chrome, like the new Chrome blocking thing, people are going to embrace it, be a lot more eager to use this, because not many people are going to think through and process the fact that this is quite possibly Google trying to, like, kind of grab a bigger hold on the market and, like, kind of compare it to a monopoly, let's say. But people aren't going to think about that. They're just going to want a cleaner, more streamlined internet browsing experience, and Google is giving it to them.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, so I just looked it up for you, Eric, and yeah, it's about 30% of all internet users use AdBlock. So that's a really, really, really high number. And I think maybe this Chrome experience will bring back a couple of those users, but also some people just don't want to see ads at all on their content, and they just find even like banner ads sometimes to be intrusive, or like they just don't look nice and they don't fit in the page well. And if Google does this correctly, they'll bring back those people too, but you always have to keep in mind that there are other companies who sell ads out there, and it'll just be really interesting to see the response from everyone.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it's we always talk about like free market and stuff like that, and that I guess it's like, since we use Chrome, I mean, it's kind of our choice to use Chrome. They're not forcing us to use it. So this actually might be a good opportunity for other browsers, because there's actually quite a few other really powerful, good browsers out there. This might be a good opportunity for them to get a little bit of a hold on the market share, on global market share. So there's good and bad. There's good and bad to this, but it is really interesting to see Google take this hard press approach to advertising. And as Google AdSense is like one of their biggest moneymakers. I mean, it's about time they've gotten into it, to be honest. They've kind of ignored the ad block problem for a while, so this will be interesting to see how it goes over. And I think we were talking about YouTube's new advertising stuff that they just released. Didn't they just release, like last week, they just released new terms of use or something, right, Paul?
That's from the Philip DeFranco video that we just watched, which kind of went over the guidelines. It's actually a really good video. I'll also link that in the description and put it in the comments here so y'all can watch it. It's about, like, just the first 5 minutes are the important part that we're going to talk about here. And it kind of lays down some new guidelines, like how you can't have, like, if you have graphic content, it has to be in the right context. If you have offensive words, they can't be too rampant throughout your content. No offensive stuff at all. It's kind of like saying, like, yeah, we reserve the right to censor your content, and we will censor at will just so we can keep these advertisers here. So how do you guys think that's going to play out in the YouTube world? Like, do you think some pretty big YouTubers are going to see even their stuff continue to get censored, even though YouTube tried to find this happy medium between we want to please our advertisers, but we also want to please the creators? And I think creators have really been stepped on in the past couple months here in terms of that. I don't think they've had many wins to speak of.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube has sadly let the little guys take the fall for this one. Not just like little guys and littler YouTubers, but even the big YouTubers have seen a big hit at this. Like Google sadly, which to our YouTube, because we're not bashing YouTube, we'll say YouTube. YouTube has kind of taken the let the little guys take the hit for this one, sadly, which is kind of sad. It kind of shows that YouTube doesn't really have most of its content creators back. It has its big hitters like the Slow-Mo guys and Superwoman and some of these bigger channels that are like family-friendly bigger channels. It's got their backs, but like as far as like us small content creators and some of the more not advertiser friendly content, it's let them take this big hit, which is kind of saddening for YouTube. And I think this this new terms of use update is a win and a sell. The old terms of use were really loose, very like no nudity, no swearing, no violence, no bullying. Basically, that's how simple it was, and that's how laid up. And so it was up to your own discretion to decide if your video was advertiser friendly or not. It was up to your own discretion. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of reverb right now. Go ahead. Someone take over for a second. Paul, can you go ahead and tell about how this is going to affect content creators, you think?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that content creators will see is they're going to have to fight for their videos to get monetized more. So, like, say you have this history channel who does a documentary on the Holocaust. That video, under these new terms of use, might not get monetized at first. They're going to have to fight for that monetization. They're going to have to go through the appeals process with YouTube and kind of explain the context of the video. Because right now, not every video is going to be personally reviewed by someone. It's going to be reviewed by Google's algorithm, which was currently doing the job and is going to continue to do the job. And they're going to have to get a lot of appeals settled through that. So it's going to require a lot of work from creators to make sure that if they are putting out this questionable, I put that in quotes, content, they're just going to have to do a lot more work in terms of getting it monetized. Like, obviously, the people who want to be offensive can still be offensive. They just should know that they're not going to get paid for being offensive unless they have a strong viewer base or something. But I think one of the biggest things is just that not only are creators going to just have to start fighting for their monetizations, they're also going to have to keep it more in mind when they're creating their content. So maybe if you're playing like a violent video game, one of the things they said with violent video games is that the violence can't be rampant and the montage can't be based on extreme violence. So I don't know what the definition of that would be, but if I was like a gaming YouTuber who like played Call of Duty or Battlefield 1 or something, I'd be questioning like, are my videos going to start getting demonetized? How do I need to edit my videos in a way that I'll still keep their monetization, or am I just going to have to peel literally every video I submit? So I think it's going to be a really tough time for creators to figure out how to not skirt these rules, but fall within these rules and keep being able to do this as their jobs, as a lot of big YouTubers do, and even some small YouTubers are making enough to do this. So I think it's just going to require a lot more care and attention.
And I think it's hard because they say context is important. That's one thing that was different than the old YouTubers stuff, was that context is important now. In the old stuff, it was really loose, exactly like I said. Like, it was up to everybody's. Like, it was up in the air on what that meant. Like, no violence. What does that even mean? Does that mean no violence in movies? Does that mean no violence in video games? Does that mean no violence in that? What does that mean? But now they've specified it a little bit. But at the end, they leave this little tag that says within context, and it's like context is subjective. You know, what you deem is this thing, I deem is a different thing. So it's really interesting it'll be really interesting to see how they deem context. What do you think, Alex?
One thing that I think of is just like they're trying to please everybody, and that's an impossible thing to do. Like, somebody is always going to be offended. Like, if I say a bad word, like a bad word, like, at least one person is gonna feel bad about it and possibly complain. Like, I feel like they've kind of taken the impossible task upon themselves to try to please everybody, and the only people suffering from this, I feel like, are the creators. And just like YouTube has kind of favored has favored companies, because companies are what are paying them to put this out. Like, creators aren't really aren't paying YouTube, and so YouTube is more likely to side with the advertisers and want to meet more of their demands, while creators, like, yeah, they have demands, they have needs, but YouTube is going to be a lot slower to satisfy them. And I feel like with these regulations, that's exactly what they're doing. They're getting super, super specific. And I think one thing that I thought was really, really funny was in that video that you showed me, Eric, was that they have like a questionnaire at the bottom where you can like ask, just like, what happens if, just like, for example, what happens if so-and-so uploads a video with excessive violence? And they have like 3 or 4 options, just like to make sure like you understand and learned. And I just feel like all this is very, very pointless.
Yeah, they're trying to please people with 2 very different objectives, which makes it really hard. But do you guys think it's YouTube's obligation to please the advertisers or to please the content creators? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't have content creators, you don't have content to put advertisers on. And if you don't have advertisers, you don't have money to let those content creators have it. So who do you think YouTube's obligation is to, Paul?
To me, I don't, like, yeah, I was just thinking about that in my head. Like, they're walking a really fine line with this. Because if creators move to another service, like, I don't know, like, Vimeo's pretty good. They're not the best for, like, they don't meet what YouTube does in terms of just creating communities and stuff. But it's still a video hosting site, and they could easily change to meet this new demand from creators that, hey, we just want, like, some place to post whatever we want and still have the option to make money off of it. So you do have to walk this fine line. But I think right now, Google's main obligation is towards advertisers, because that's where they're getting the money from to open up YouTube. And I think as content creators, we also need to realize, like, that's how we're getting paid. Like, that's our incentive to make content. Very few people, I think, on YouTube nowadays make the content out of the goodness of their hearts or just because they like it anymore. A lot of these big people, they've seen the money and they don't want that to go away, obviously, because, like, they quit their jobs, they quit their careers, they're doing YouTube now, which, like, yeah, it can go on a resume, but it's also not, like, a major selling factor, I think, for a lot of companies. So they're walking a fine line here, but I think right now, by going with advertisers, I think they're making a good business decision just to keep the money flowing inwards. And on other sites, you're just not going to get as much ad revenue.
Yeah, and I mean we've seen. I mean, since these new terms of use in like the past months that they've brought advertisers back, I mean we've seen an insane increase on AdSense, and I can't even imagine how much the bigger YouTubes have seen on their ad revenue. So whatever they did, I guess, is working. I don't know. It just kind of propagates this whole. To me, the underlying theme is it kind of propagates this whole like family friendly theme, like this cookie cutter YouTuber theme that they've been putting on. Which we've seen over the past years, like YouTube Rewind, we talk about it a lot of time, for 2016, had very few of the growing YouTubers, had their advertiser-friendly YouTubes. It seems like YouTube's just trying to put on this face of, hey, everybody, we're trying to be healthy. Like at Google I.O., they didn't talk about any of the new technology. They didn't talk about any of the cool new communities they were building. They brought out the slow-mo guys, which I love. Don't get me wrong, slow-mo guys are awesome. And they talked about how some guy did 3D printing with an arm or something like that. That has nothing to do with YouTube, and that has nothing to do with it. And they didn't really. It seems like they were just trying to put up a face, is what it feels like. But I mean, it's too bad. I mean, what are you gonna do, right? I mean, they have so many people to please that it's basically impossible. What do you guys think of YouTube Red?
I don't. Sorry, Paul. I don't really know a lot about it. All I know is that, like, if everybody embraced it and everybody was paying X amount of money per month, it would do away with like this ad drama, and it would do away with all these issues. Like it would do away with the creators versus advertisers kind of issue. But not enough people see that. Not enough people realize like the greater good that YouTube Red is trying to accomplish. What they see is a fixed amount of money they're going to have to pay per month. And me, like, I'm kind of a good example of that. I would more than willingly pay for example, Spotify. I pay the monthly fee to get practically unlimited music all the time. But with YouTube Red, like, I don't use YouTube enough to be willing to pay for that. However, I do kind of appreciate what YouTube Red is trying to do.
Well, the thing about YouTube Red, and me and Paul had a lengthy discussion about this, and I think we basically came to the same conclusion, that the way YouTube Red is currently delivered and was delivered at the beginning has really soured everybody on it. Isn't that kind of what we got to, Paul?
Yeah, it definitely has soured everyone, just because it's really hard to go from a free platform to a paid platform. And the way they sell it is just, oh, you won't see ads. Well, everyone's tried that, and I don't think those ad-free programs do well. They have to sell it as the idea that, hey, the more people who are on YouTube Red, the less we have to abide by these community guidelines. The more we can go back to this old style of YouTube where you can post whatever you want, and your views are just tied to how many YouTube Red your revenues tied to how many YouTube Red views did you get, because those people, like, that revenue is not coming from the ads that are on those videos. It's coming from what YouTube Red people already paid into the system. So the focus goes away from, are we pleasing advertisers, and it goes to, how do we please the users of YouTube, whether those be the congestors of the content or the creators of the content. And I think that's what would make YouTube great again.
Yes, exactly. You're exactly right, because the analogy I used, and I think we've talked about this in some other podcasts, but we'll just briefly go over it, is like news back in the day used to be very bombastic, and then and to sell more copies, they would lie about things and they would make it sound crazy and all this random stuff that was not necessarily important, and people stopped trusting the media and stopped trusting the news because it was all lies. It was all full of lies, and they thought, how do we fix this? And they went to a subscription model method, and news has been forever fixed since that one transition. And I think that's because journalists, to sell newspapers and to get on news, they no longer had to write bombastic articles. They no longer had to do crazy stuff, and the news agencies no longer had to print really bombastic stuff and to make clickbaity articles. And that's what YouTube Red would have done, sadly, but they delivered it in such a trashy method. They said, oh, you're going to get YouTube Red originals, you're going to get something you already paid for, you're going to have to, pay for it. And when you look at Spotify, Premium and YouTube Red, they actually offer the exact same features. YouTube Red actually comes with more. There's a bit of a price difference, but the content's a little bit more tangible in YouTube Red. And the way they came across with YouTube Red to do advertising, instead of views, it's actually watch time. So you get paid per minute of content watched from a YouTube Red user, which seems way more viable, because then you're encouraged to make good, lengthy content, good quality content to keep a user there, not clickbaity crap that's going to end up on the trending page, And then, exactly like Paul said, they're not obligated to please advertisers, because they just want to please users and they want to give the users what they want, and that's what they're going to do. And then creators like us, or like smaller YouTubers or bigger YouTubers, they're going to make great content to keep their people entertained rather than get them to click on the video. It fixes so many problems wrong with YouTube, and it just shows it just adds to a number of list of YouTube's mistakes that they've made recently. But so Alex, let's say I came to you and I delivered it like that. I said, here's a way for you to buy into making this community better. Like, you like YouTube, it's not going away, you like it. But if you pay this, you're contributing to make YouTube a better place for everybody. You won't get free ads, and you won't get ads anymore on mobile or on normal. You get save for later options, so you can save any of the videos you want for later. And there's some premium, more highbrow content, like Rooster Teeth releases movies, or one of your favorite YouTubers wants to do something that costs more and that they would never be able to do personally. And now you can help fund them by getting that, and you get that content for free. And you also get to help the little guys and everything. Now is that something you'd be more interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it's kind of funny. Like, the more you went into it, the more you kind of talked about all the features that YouTube Red brings. The more I listened, the more interested in YouTube Red I was than I was literally 5 minutes before. It's kind of interesting how that works. And, like, especially what caught my mind was that YouTube Red would pay you by minutes watched and not just views. That I feel like that alone would clean up the YouTube community. Like, people would be forced to come up with like quality stuff, good, wholesome, and like you said, not just clickbaity. Because like, I'll click on something because I'll admit I'm a lot bigger. I'm a much bigger sucker for clickbaity titles than I care to admit.
Everybody is.
Yeah, when I figure it out, they're like, oh, I've been had. I'll instantly leave, like, as soon as I can. I might even click the dislike button just because I've been duped. But I feel like with YouTube Red, this would, I don't know, I'd feel less cheated all the time, and it would clean up the trending page, like you said, making YouTube a better place.
It all really just shows how out of touch they are with their community and stuff, and it kind of akens to them wanting to please the advertisers instead of pleasing the users. If they sold this as a way to better a user's experience, because Spotify Premium, they do a genius job on selling it. They do an absolutely positively genius job. They have this save for later feature, which essentially says you can download it on your phone, but you can't, if you pull out your SD card, they pull everything off of it and you can't have access to it, but they're taking up space on your phone. And they sell that you won't have ads anymore, and that you can support the music people you like. If you like smaller people, Spotify Premium helps pay to have their content for free on there. And it makes Spotify a better experience for you. You know what I mean? And if that's not your thing, you can go to the ad-based version of it and you still get a pretty darn good experience. But I mean, YouTube really lost the bucket there. What do you think, Paul? You think if it would have been delivered in the way I kind of said it, you would have been more apt and more apt to try it out? Go ahead.
Yeah, most definitely. It's like, to use kind of like a analogy, it's kind of like the idea of vaccinations, where they say, oh, if everyone gets this disease will be eradicated because it has no hosts to live in. The disease here being shitty content such as like our clickbait titles, or even like deemed offensive content. It's just going to remove the need for that, because if it's offensive to someone, they're just going to leave immediately. Like Alex said, they know that it's not what they were looking for, and they leave immediately. There's none of this, oh, I'm going to wait and see if the clickbait's like there. No, they're just going to leave, and that person doesn't get paid, so they don't have an incentive to make it to that level. And even from vaccinations, the people who don't get vaccinated benefit from other people in the population getting vaccinated, because there's just less of a chance for them to get infected. So even if I'm not a YouTube Red user, I still benefit from all the people who are on YouTube Red. So say I only watch like one YouTube video a week. Well, I'm not going to pay for YouTube Red, obviously, but all the people who do it every day and pay for it, they helped me out. And it's kind of like this collective system of just betterment of the entire platform.
You're exactly right. Like it's a even if like 25% of YouTube users paid for YouTube Red, which is a lot of people, that would fix probably all of the problems. And it just shows. But I mean, there's no going back. I mean, we're not going to convince people now to buy YouTube Red unless they do a whole new campaign to push it, and they're too worried about getting advertisers right now, so they're not going to push a new YouTube Red campaign. And I mean, I'm a YouTube Red subscriber, and I think it's okay that you guys aren't, because it makes sense right now. It's like YouTube's going to stay crappy because there's not enough people on it, and they delivered it completely wrong, and it's just not for everybody. So I understand everybody's side of it right now, except for YouTube's. I mean, they totally missed out on this shot. Well, I think that's enough. Any closing words on YouTube, guys?
No, not that I can think of.
No, I've said my part.
All right. Okay. Well, I think we can move on to our weekly segment we like to call Magic Leap Drama. Anybody care to fill us in on the newest drama with Magic Leap?
Well, as we've all pretty much gathered, Magic Leap is still all cloak and dagger with what exactly they have to offer. However, now people are saying that they're fundraising again, and their campaigns are rumored to have raised upwards of $8 billion, I believe it was.
Are you done, or did you cut out?
Oh no, I was done. Sorry.
Paul, what do you think about an $8 billion valuation for Magic Leap, who has released no product and who has not even teased a product? Go ahead.
I think it's a little ridiculous. I read that same article. They haven't reached the $8 billion yet. The funding round hasn't started yet officially, but I'm sure it will come and they will raise the money pretty easily. But I think it's a little just ridiculous in the fact that the CEO continues to say, "Oh, this new round of funding will allow us to bring a product to market." You said that about the last funding round. So what makes this extra $1 billion different than the first $1 billion?
$2 billion, extra $2 billion.
But what makes it different? Like, at this point, as one of these big companies or investors who's putting in all this money, I've got to start asking, like, so what makes this extra money that you want special compared to the billions we already gave you? I thought the last money we gave you was supposed to bring this product to market, and yet we don't have a product at market. And the people who are going to be your customers, you're keeping in the dark about everything.
Exactly. And I think what's really interesting to me is, have you noticed how Google hasn't put any more money in? Ever since they put their initial money, do you notice how they've capped right there? They haven't added in anything, whereas some other companies like Alibaba have come in and kept refunding. But Google, who's notoriously smart with their investments, they have not put any more money in. They've just kind of stayed there. Do you think that's a sign for anything?
I don't say it's really a sign. And Google does have their, like, huge mess-ups with their money, such as, like, Google Glass, things like that, where they put a ton of money in to put the technology out there, and then technology just didn't take off. So I think right now this is just the most they're willing to put in, because they want to see how actual customers are going to see this technology. And right now, I think they're smart enough to see that we have a business user base looking to be consumers of the mixed reality stuff, and I don't think Magic Leap is going for those business customers. So I think Google's just gonna plug the hole for right now by saying, like, we want to see how the normal consumer reacts to this technology, and we want to see how you guys are going to market it. And obviously, I think they'll help out the company a lot with that. But at this point, that's where I see them, as just being in this stage of, like, yeah, we've given you enough. Let's see what you can do with the stuff we've given you.
I think you're exactly right. And it's just interesting that they're coming out with every week we have to talk about Magic Leap in some factor or another, and there's always new drama, but yet nothing for product. And I don't know. What about you, Alex? How do you feel about another couple $1 billion?
I don't know. I really hope they're smart with their money, but I kind of agree with Paul there with his stance on Google, because as an investor, if I'm going to invest millions and millions of dollars, I'm going to want to see what I'm investing in. So I feel like for people, for Magic Leap to keep getting so much money, like $2 billion, I don't know. I kind of take that as an assurance that Magic Leap just might have something good after all, because if they have so many big companies investing so much money in, I feel like investors are going to want to see, and if they do get like sneak peeks of Magic Leap, they like what they see and are willing to put the money in, despite kind of the cloak and dagger drama revolving around Magic Leap. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And we haven't seen, basically all of the news we've seen from them, sadly, has kind of been not favorable news, and we're all just ready to see a product, and I guess that's basically our input. Does anybody else have any other?
Well, I was gonna say, like, thoughts like that like Alex just brought up. I think that just buys into this idea that, like, it's a bubble. Like, Eric, you sent me that article from Mark Cuban on LinkedIn today, where he was talking about the current tech bubble and how we have these companies who don't exactly do anything, but we're putting in investors are just continuing to throw money into them because they see these success stories like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all those, and it's just like, oh, Facebook and Instagram, same thing. But still, you see these tech companies and you see the successes. So now everyone's just in this fervor. We're like, how much money can I give this company because I think they have something good? And we're reaching this stage where it's just, we're in this kind of a bubble idea. And we don't know how Magic Leap is going to do. And to say just because they have a ton of money doesn't mean they're going to succeed, you know?
I'm actually curious what the world record or what the record is for most funding with no product or anything like that, or no revenue. I know people get billions and billions of dollars for no revenue, but having no product even and no consumer testing, I mean, that's got to be up there, like the world record, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't know if there's anyone who has been checking those statistics, but I feel like if someone was, this would get pretty close to the top of just, and I think you need to add that that's off of like private equity. So people who don't have stakes in the company, buying stakes in the company, it's not like the CEO, the Ronnie Abovitz guy or whatever his name is. I think it's that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not, he's not putting in all this money. It's other people putting in the money, and yeah, he might have something. But it's also, like, that's a really scary thing to think about. Like, just an idea is getting that much kind of money, and that has to be close to some kind of record for just an idea raising that much money.
It definitely has to be. Ed, I mean, but Alibaba, Google, they know what they're doing, so I mean, I still have faith. But, I mean, it's been a year, and we're still talking about Magic Leap, and we still have not even seen a leak of anything for a year. So I think it's about time for them to show it. So I think we'll probably wrap up with a quick little AWE wrap up. We'll just kind of burn through some of the cool things that were announced there. Do you get? If any of you guys have that tab open, you guys want to read down some of those for me?
Yeah, I think one of the coolest ones I saw was the Meta 2. Meta came out with a new augmented reality operating platform where it seemed like the guy was. He was using his phone to work with the Meta, so he pulled like a little hologram off of his phone and put it in the air in front of him. And I think that was one of the most amazing things about the entire keynote, was that coming out of Meta. I think that device is very cool. Like the Meta 2, I think it's going to be very cool to check out, and we should seriously consider getting one. Just looking at this new platform that they've come out with for their operating system. It looks very clean and it looks very functional. Like he's literally grabbing, like it looks like his hand is reaching out and grabbing these sticky notes and pulling them off the augmented platform onto his phone, or pulling them off his phone and onto the augmented platform. It's pretty cool.
I think you're right. It's really cool, and I think it's smart for Meta. They're kind of taking that virtual workspace approach because they realize that they're tethered. They created a tethered device, and that so if you're going to be using it, you're probably going to be at a computer working. So I think it's really smart of them to be approaching this virtual workspace, and I think that's the angle they need to take. They need to drop they can maybe do some gaming stuff, but as far as like untethered device approaches, they need to drop all kind of advertising for that and just say like, this is the go-to device for getting work done at your office or to do gaming at your computer rig. That's what they need to start like really, really pushing. One thing I did see is we'll post the video where the guy does it. It's actually the CEO. I don't remember his name right now. But the holograms actually, did you guys watch the video? The holograms actually look really shaky. Did you guys notice that?
Yeah. I was just watching the video actually, and yeah, they look extremely shaky, which is a thing we've also seen with the HoloLens, especially when it's recording. So that might be an issue with just the recording of it. I'd like to get one myself and try it out.
So that's actually what I was going to get into. On the HoloLens Slack, the Holo developer Slack, there was a bunch of people that are AWE posting live posts and stuff like that. And actually one of the guys tested it, and he said it is as shaky as it looks in the video. So that's just third party. That's just like a friend of a friend kind of knowledge. But that's what that guy said. He said it was as shaky in the video, and our videos don't shake that bad. I mean, that was pretty bad, and he was barely moving his head, and but we always know how recording can mess up, exactly like you said. But Alex, you probably use the HoloLens the most out of everybody in the office. Do you think holograms being tethered to their spot is extremely important to the experience, or do you think that's something that can be shirked a little bit?
It can be shirked a tiny bit, but not a lot. I feel like, I don't know, it's really cool when I can pick a hologram and drag it from point A to point B and not have it so wavy and wobbly. Like in that video, watching him, it's just a small little pieces of paper or just colored squares from 1 to 2, and his hand is going through it, and it's super shaky, and it's almost like it's glitching out. Did that seem like it was glitching out to you guys?
It didn't look right. Go ahead.
Yeah, it looked. Sorry, Paul.
No, I was just gonna say it didn't look right, and it looked shaky, but it also looked smooth. Once he had it in his hand, it looked like a smooth thing. It wasn't like the hologram was lagging through his hand.
You're so right. The transition from his phone, so it's actually really cool. I mean, go ahead and you can either check this out after the podcast or pause the podcast right now and go check this out. Because it's really hard to explain without seeing it. He's literally holding his hand, and he reaches down like he's going to pick up something off of his phone and grabs the screen off of his phone, basically, and it turns into a hologram. I mean, now that was fluid. That was impressive. I'm not going to lie. That was really cool technology. Not something I think that would be quite surprisingly easily replicatable with the HoloLens. Very, very easily, because we've already seen some really cool concepts that people just hackers have made in there. Not like actual hackers, but just homebrewing hackers have made where they control the HoloLens with their phone. I mean, that's as easy as writing a script that when you tap your phone, it pops up in front of you, or we've seen the Internet of Things. So, I mean, I think it's not something that's specific to Meta, but I think it's a really cool concept. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Meta is definitely... Meta... What, Paul?
I was going to say, I definitely think it's a really cool concept, and I think that's actually a major innovation for MR and AR technologies right now. And the fact that is truly what these devices are trying to accomplish, which is melding this phone on your world, this world on your phone, and merging it with the real world around you. That's the exact thing that we've talked about for so long with these technologies. I think that it's just an important innovation. Imagine being this video looks cool on my phone, but I want a bigger screen. Pull the video off your phone and put it in the air in front of you, and then give yourself a 55-inch screen to watch. I think that's what's really cool about this. At least that's what I see. Or if you have a room full of people wearing these devices and you have like an Excel sheet on your even computer screen and you pull it off your computer screen and put it in the air in front of everyone so you don't have to have like a projector, everyone just has these headsets on. I think that's a very cool thing. And you don't even need like all the technology around you because you can just do this in a room that may not have a projector, and you don't have a bunch of people crowded around your computer screen, but they can just like sit in a circle and each gets their own view of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Paul. And Eric, you you mentioned that like an aspect like this would be relatively easily replicated on, for example, the HoloLens. But Meta is like they're the first group to actually start pushing this concept. And I think a cool idea from like a gamer's point of view would be, imagine like playing like Angry Birds on your phone, and then incorporating your idea, Paul, and just like pinching, grabbing, and throwing like the Angry Birds screen, like a 50-inch Angry Birds, and like playing from my phone, but me being able to see it on this huge screen in front of me. I think that'd be really, really cool to see. Other apps kind of adopting that function, or function. I'm not sure the word I'm looking for.
We're pretty close to it. I think Paul's right, where it needs to have this completely symbiotic virtual experience. Mixed reality. I mean, we could even distort that term and what it is and say that it is, you're mixing two experiences, you're mixing two devices reality. So then it really is a truly mixed reality, and it's just really interesting to think of the concept and the idea of that. And I think it'll eventually move away from solid devices because they'll just get expensive to produce and not as efficient. But I mean, for now, you want your workspace and your VR, MR space to be like symbiotic all in one. And I think it's really exciting. What's some of the other things they announced? Any of the big hitters? I still haven't pulled it up yet. Let me see.
That was one of the biggest ones that just like stood out to me. There's like some smaller ones, but they're really more about like the systems that will start supporting these MR devices. But I think that's like the biggest one that really we care about here at the Hollow Herald, and the fact that it's about user experience, and that's like what we're attempting to kind of show to people is what are these experiences like right now as we have them, and without all the flair that the companies put with them. And I think this demo does a great job of what we kind of try and do, because that obviously was not, it was obviously a staged demo, but they didn't put a bunch of like animations that the device wouldn't actually be able to replicate, or they didn't look as nice as they had generated in the video,
Exactly. And I mean, that'll be coming out later this summer. And we're looking to get maybe another device or a second HoloLens or something. And so we'll be definitely looking in. We'll keep our eye on the Meta. We've been going back and forth for probably about 6 months now about our choice on the Meta. So we're still not quite there yet. So yeah, we'll post a link to this. I'll post it right here. Actually, this is from Next Reality. They make pretty good content. If you guys are interested, I'll just post it in the chat and it'll be in the description below. That's just kind of a quick write up of the first 2 days. Not a lot happened. But, I mean, it was I think the third day is where, I haven't seen a write-up of the third day yet, sadly, but that's where a lot of the content happened. So be on the look for that. Anything else, boys? Any other topics we missed?
Not a whole. I'd just like to add off of AWE real fast. At day one, Epson, the projector company. I guess projectors are what I think of when I think of the company Epson, but they announced two different virtual reality or augmented reality headsets, and they're surprisingly small, a little bit bigger than Google Glass. But one of the big features is that it said they're supposed to kind of conform to hard hats and like a lot of safety equipment that big companies use. And I remember Austin posted a video. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like a virtual reality headset attached to a hard hat, and it looked absolutely ridiculous. Eric, do you remember that?
Yeah, exactly. It was Daiquiri was the company.
Yeah, Daiquiri.
And it cost $15,000 if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it cost an obscene amount. And it's called the Epson Moverio BT 350 or 350. so to speak. And it looks really, really cool. Super small, super streamlined. And it's designed for a busy commercial environment where glasses can be shared by users. So I think this is kind of a cool idea. Like Epson is kind of muscling their way into the mixed reality industry, and it's excited to see more and more players coming into the game.
Yeah, it's interesting to see because not a lot of companies got into VR. I mean, a lot of people are really banking on AR, so there's definitely a future in it. It'll be exciting to see which one takes hold, or which form factor, or which pricing, or which company. It's all up in the air right now, and that's what's really exciting. And I think it'll drive a lot of innovation and competition. Well, anything else, boys?
Not that I can think of. It was a really good podcast, though. I think we talked about some really interesting stuff, and I hope you guys thought the same. And we'd love to hear what everyone thought about what we were talking about in the comments. We had a pretty good discussion in the comments of this live stream, and hope more people can join us for the one next week.
So if you're listening to the pre-recorded version, go ahead and stop in for the live one. It's really great. We're thinking about expanding it out to a video podcast, and so look for that in the future. And just thanks for listening, and thanks for all you guys do. Anything else you guys have, boys?
Nope. Just a big thanks to all our supporters. Hope you enjoyed our stuff. We certainly have a good time doing this, and we'll catch you next week.
Anything from you, Paul?
Just thanks a lot for watching. We really appreciate everyone who watches our videos and comments on them and likes them, and I think we have one of the best fan bases on YouTube in just terms of how much we talk with each other in the comments, and I think we have some really good discussions about AR/MR technologies and just technology in general. So I'd love to meet more of you guys on the live podcast and kind of have more fluid discussions rather than just through the comment section, but it's always been fun.
Exactly. We're going to soon start branching out into more live streams that are not podcast related. We want to start doing at least one every 2 weeks, or if not more, and those will last an hour or two for a while, because we really like streaming. We really like the feedback. And I think Paul was definitely right. We do have one of the best communities on YouTube, and I think we could say we probably have one of the best augmented reality communities on the internet, and I think we just want to keep fostering that. So look forward to those. And this has been the Hollow Herald Podcast, episode number 14.
Yep. 14.
This has been episode number 14, and thanks for listening, guys. We'll catch you guys in the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.